This week would have marked the start of the Tokyo Olympics. It would have been this Monday that the Rugby Sevens competition began. Of course, with that not happening, instead all we can do is play a fun game and ask if you could take any Olympian from a non-rugby sport and move them over to play sevens in what is now next year's Olympics, who would it be? I mean, recently we've seen Warren Weir, the Jamaican sprinter, who of course won a gold in the relay, move over to play sevens for his country. Who would you take over from what sport and why? Let us know and we'll read them out next week. So, Super Rugby Aotearoa continued this week exactly as it has been so far. The Chiefs lost again. I picked a bad choice of team there. And the Crusaders, of course, won again, which I... No, hold on. Does the team that... I know normally the team that scores more points wins. Does that still apply if one of them is the Crusaders? Like, don't they just always win? The Crusaders lost. What? Okay. Right, apparently that can happen. Apparently the entire world is upside down and the Crusaders can lose games now, even despite George Bridge doing just ridiculously skillful things. And elsewhere, as I mentioned, the Chiefs couldn't pull off their first win of the competition, unfortunately, coming just inches short with just moments to go, but ultimately failing to get that first win on the board. Whilst in Australia, the Brumbies continued to march along for a 24-0 win over the Force. And meanwhile, on the other side of the world, which is funny enough the side of the world I'm currently on, we finally know when rugby is properly returning. We already had a date for the Premiership, but the Pro 14 now has a date, a list of fixtures for when they're coming back with a few local derbies, and it looks like we might have a date for when the Six Nations will be resuming after a few games were called off at the end of this year's tournament. And there looks like there could be international rugby beyond that, including a new tournament with Fiji in the Six Nations. Anything's possible apparently. There's all kinds of things going on. The Crusaders and Fiji are joining the Six Nations for a bit, potentially, maybe. There's so much currently going on, including as well Matt Gitto, who's going to have a lot going on, a lot of early mornings coming up almost immediately, because he this week posted the first picture of his wonderful new baby girl, Winter Bell Gitto, which I'm pretty sure is something I once bought in a really posh cake shop.
Wait, what did he say?
I want to make it clear, like, I didn't buy Matt Gitto's daughter in a cake shop. That was a joke, because his surname sounds a bit like Gatto, which is French for cake. So, as I mentioned at the head of the show, this would have been Olympic week. This would have been the week in which we were all tuning in to watch the Sevens take place. Instead, Wood Rugby's put together a series called The Mind of a Champion on what it took the two coaches involved 4 years ago, Ben Ryan and Tim Walsh, to take that title, to win both the men and women's titles in Rio in 2016. And so, I had the very exciting opportunity to catch up with two gold medal winning coaches. Here it is. Ben Ryan, Tim Walsh, thank you for joining me. How are we doing? How are we?
I'm all good here, grey skies. I'm grey in my head after Brentford losing the first round of the playoffs yesterday. So we need to turn that around on Wednesday, but I'm sure they will.
Yeah, Monday night here, but we've hit the ground running today. The boys in at training and recovering from playing some 15s on the weekend.
Brilliant. So it looks like, I suppose, you've managed to find things to do, considering this would have been the week of the Olympics. You know, today would have been, as we're talking, would have been the start of the Rugby Sevens. You've managed to find things to fill the time instead of just pining, I think, as I'll be doing.
Yeah, I guess so. We would have had two different Olympics in Tokyo, because for me, I'm no longer head coaching stuff. So I would have been over there with some TV guys doing stuff and enjoying it from the sidelines. But I'm sure also getting very jealous of the guys that were actually performing and coaching out there and missing it probably, and quickly then getting my next 4 years changed so that I can go to the Paris Olympics. I'm sure that's probably what would have happened, but luckily that didn't. But for Tim, yeah, I mean, that must be very weird to know that you should have been there, right?
Yeah, I mean, sevens being on the World Series and seven, it's a game of adaptation and always trying to be resilient and be positive. And, the way that we've looked at it, obviously there's some massively challenging times, both for program and for players, but in reality, it's given us another year to be better, another year for coach. And I think it's going to be probably the most anticipated Olympics ever.
Obviously, in the last couple of weeks, you've been looking back quite a lot at what you got up to 4 years ago with this new series on the World Rugby channel. Is this something you've been looking at back at regularly? Have you just found yourself randomly over the last 4 years kind of going, I won Olympic gold, I did that happened? Or has it been quite nice to actually just go back to it a few years on and look at it quite retroactively?
It's always nice to go back and have a look, but there will be some stuff and continue to use, but the game's going to evolve, teams evolve, ahead of it have to be different, and particularly when you're coaching a women's team that pretty much started at a foundation level and built up over sort of 5 to 6 years. So wonderful memories, as both Ben and another coach that was at the Olympics can attest to. But it's a whole new challenge, a whole new focus. So things are different, and then you throw
the pandemic
in there. Very different. So
for me, Robbie, I guess it's been slightly different because I talked quite a lot about the story because the book came out, and then the film's in process at the moment as well, and so it has been a theme where most people, when I'm having interviews or conversations, they ask about Fiji, so I keep talking about Fiji and going on about Fiji, and I kind of. As much as I'm excited about what the film's going to do, I want to bookend that as quickly as I can now, really. And so I'm enjoying moving into other areas. And I just need to quickly get my teeth into something perhaps where I can, no longer talk about what had happened in the past. Ideally, I may never do anything ever again, and I'll just be that sad bloke that talked about that one event that people hopefully remember them by. But I think I've got plenty of petrol in the tank to do a few other things, really. So I've just got to move on from that, really. Get over it.
I'm absolutely certain you have. Tim, is there a part of you that's slightly jealous you weren't put in a banknote when you won gold?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. No, no. I think we've been.
You got stamps, Walshy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Players.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good.
No, I mean, I was asked that question in where's your gold medal? No, coaches don't get it. And all that stuff. But no, it's the memories which you really, really cherish. And as a coach, it's to adding value and having an influence on a program or a player or something like that. That's really rewarding. And it's the rest of it sort of material things, but they're good. They're good stories and nice keepsakes. But the important stuff is the stuff that you keep close to your heart, and that's the ones that you'll cherish.
So last week we asked you what Will Ferrell films you think would be what rugbyman players. We had a few suggestions in. Guppers says Johnny May as Elf. Now that's a spot on call. I love that. There's no scene in Elf where he thinks he's possessed by a chicken, but otherwise there's an energy about that. You just want Elf to run sideways a bit, and otherwise you're spot on. That's a great one. Bobbler says Faf is Fire Saga. Now I put this out on Twitter when I watched the Eurovision movie recently, but the kid playing the young Will Ferrell in that movie looks uncannily like Faf de Klerk. And finally, Jake Hage throws in Joe Schmidt as the Lego movie because everything in it, everything they're involved with is so detailed, so calculated. There's a plan for every single bit of it. And, he also says Joe Schmidt 100% seems like the kind of guy that used glue on Lego. Again, spot on. I can't see a world in which that isn't the case. So that's about all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us. Please join us next week when the world might be normal again. The Crusaders might have won, or it might have got even madder, and the Chiefs might have won as well. We just can't know what's going to happen. Please, in the meantime, click on the subscribe thing right below to subscribe to the World Rugby YouTube channel. It's not a trick, it just drops all the videos into your inbox. It's really quite handy. And one of those videos will be next week's edition of The Feed, and I'll see you right then.